the other pieces that they're working with in the environment, but that's only one of the many networks that you have to be aware of when you're thinking about vCenter's needs. Another one is actually the storage network. Now, for many environments, the storage network is a completely different network than the production network. And there's a lot of reasons for this. Storage traffic in many environments tends to be at a level, the amount of throughput that's required, that is much, much greater than production networking. And so if I'm running, for example, single gigabit connections, I may need to have a separate pair of connections that get my ESX server down to its storage. I separate these out in, for example, the single gigabit world because, well, I want to make sure that any sort of contention on this storage network is not going to impact the ability of my virtual machines to talk to their clients. So separating these out can be a good idea, again, to protect myself from overuse across any one of these connections. These two correspond to the two types of networking that are important for the virtual machines to accomplish the task that they need. There are, however, other networks that you need to be aware of as well. For example, a third network that can be important is what I'll just refer to generally as the management network. Now, we already saw an example of the management network back when we were talking about how you actually configure the initial settings with ESXi. ESXi likes it when you have a separate management network, and then that network is used for issuing the commands between vCenter server and obviously the vCenter client over to an ESX server. Now you might think to yourself, well, wait a minute, why do I need to have a separate network that the only reason for this network is to send those sorts of network commands or specific commands to an ESX host? Wouldn't that normally go over my production network? Well, it can. And in many environments it does. But from a security perspective, it's always a good idea to separate out those management network connections because of the types of commands that vCenter can actually send to ESX virtual machines. Now think about this. Do you have a data center? Probably. In that data center, do you lock the data center door? Sure. Why do we lock that data center door? Well, because there are items in that data center that we probably don't want people, messing around with. There are servers in there. Those servers have power buttons, for example. Those servers have connections to network and storage that we don't want someone accidentally or maliciously going in and unplugging or rearranging or doing something that we don't necessarily want them to do. So because of that, we actually lock that data center door. If I pass that management network traffic across my production network, that is no different than me having a data center and leaving the data center door unlocked. Now think about that. From within vCenter, I can power on a virtual machine or power off a virtual machine. These are two things that are generally, the power button on that machine is generally locked away behind the data center door. I can connect and disconnect various connections. And in the physical world, that's in the data center. In the logical world, that's in vCenter. So having a separate management network that routes to just the appropriate places in your network where your managers actually exist is important to ensuring that those high-level tasks, those actions like pressing the green VCR button to power on a VM or the red VCR button to power off a VM, well, ensuring that those can only be accomplished by the people who are responsible for actually accomplishing those tasks. There is a fourth type of connection that you can actually bring into an environment as well, and that's a vMotion network. This vMotion network is designed for when virtual machines need to pass from host to host, that we actually separate out the process of transferring that information or the route in which that information transfers from one host to the other onto its own network, so that none of the potential congestion that exists on the production network or on the storage network or even on the management network will impact the process of that vMotion. I can hybridize the management network and the vMotion network together. However, sometimes that vMotion process may actually consume a lot of throughput, thereby preventing me from actually initiating those management commands that I need to. So I have, look at this, 2 connections for my production network, 2 for my storage